Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm ready to go when you are.
I know it's a small sample size,
Yep.
but just with Anders, how would you, you know, rate and analyze what he's been doing for you guys so far?
Yeah, no, I think he's done a nice job so far. I think we've seen a little bit of highs and lows throughout his time with us so far at the NHL level. But I think some of the habits and some of the mentality that we have as a team has been improved, in my opinion. I think there's some things we still need to clean up, especially when we're playing with leads, is trying to stay on that front foot and trying to just keep pushing. But the fact that we've been pushing and be able to generate offense earlier in the game and putting the team in a position to have to hold leads is a good thing, and holding leads later into games and getting results out of games has been nice lately, and so I've really liked that, and but there's still a mentality that continues to need to change and have to play right through the 60 minutes on the front foot rather than sitting back and trying to play a little more conservatively. But as a high level assessment, I think he's been really effective so far.
When you made the coaching change, you sort of had to wait and see on the group and kind of assessing the moves you made in the offseason and what you have here. I guess with a larger sample size than that, how do you feel like this group has done, and where do you just, I guess, yeah, feel like that is?
I don't think when we made the coaching change, um, you know, we were in last place and didn't, that wasn't where we wanted to be or where we expected to be. We had realistic expectations coming into the year about the group, and we did make a lot of additions, but we almost had to. We had a lot of holes to fill, and so we had to bring in a number of players, and we did. Having said that, I think we expected to be a little further ahead in the standings, but there are a lot of things that we have improved upon last year, almost across the board, especially offensively. I think we're almost like a half goal a game better, and our special teams are across the board much better. So there are some things that the group has improved. Having said that, we're in or second last, and that's not ideally where we wanted to be, but it is what it is, and we are where we are, and we'll react accordingly as we head into trade deadline and the off season, and what we kind of look to do with the group moving forward. So not ideally where we'd like to be from a standing standpoint. Has there been some improvement in some areas? Yes, but I think a little bit of a mixed bag this year.
That said, where do you see the deficiencies with team speed being an area?
Potentially, it's hard to put when you're in second last place, it's hard to put your finger on one thing and saying like, oh, that's the reason why things didn't go exactly the way you may have wanted. I think it's something that we're constantly trying to evaluate, put our finger on, and determine. And is it some tactical things? Is it some a certain skill set of the group? I think it's just a combination of a number of different things. And so, could we have a little more group speed moving forward? Yeah, probably. But I don't necessarily think that's, why we're, in second last place or something like that. So, we're always trying to improve every area, and we're talking about it every day, and just trying to evaluate what we can do to kind of push the group forward.
How would you assess how things went down with the trade on Friday?
It was pretty minimal on our side. Obviously, a pretty big deal. I think there's a little bit of confusion on what our role was in that. I think for us, we were happy to get, the asset we got back. In moving Taylor, I think it was something that was, probably going to happen at some point. We're not going to use our two retained salary transactions on being involved in this one and then maybe another one with Taylor later on. And so it was one or the other. So we were either going to be involved in this or we weren't. And from my estimation, the market was probably around that, even if we stayed out of this altogether and just took the player to market later on and got a pick for him later on. But in waiting, you run the risk of things like injury, loss of, the role was diminishing almost, by the game. And so it just wasn't heading towards a way that was going to maximize or enhance value. And so in moving then, and we moved at full price and held on the other player involved. And so, it didn't make sense to wait and, not really get a better return later on. It was basically what we thought or hoped we would get, and so just move forward with it instead of risking all the things that go along with just holding on to a player and fingers crossed maybe the value increases marginally a little bit down the stretch. So,
is this about the pace that you thought you would start to see guys like Nazar and Doc and now Slager coming up during this season, or are they ahead of schedule as you guys saw?
I think it's probably about reasonable. I don't think you ever know, especially with players going into full year of pro. I'd say that with Frank, his production in the AHL was probably a little ahead of where we expected, just because there's always seems to be some transition there that occurs, and an acclimation to that new level and playing with a new team against men in a new league. It's just different, right? And sometimes that transition's a little harder on the back end than up front. So we're glad to see that he jumped right in and had success right away. And then I think you saw a little bit of that acclimation coming up at the NHL level. Another little period of trying to feel his way into a new group and a new league. But then the last little while, I've seen those steps. You're seeing that progress and the confidence come, and the offensive creation is starting to show up. And so, I don't think you really have expectations on like, oh, it's going to happen by this month, or, you let that play out. And if it's a little quicker, if it's a little slower, you trust in the player, you trust in the skill set, and you trust in their ability to impact the game at some point and figure out how to impact the game at some point in their maturation into pro hockey. So it's hard to really put yes, this is exactly how we thought it would go, but there's things that ebb and flow in that development. But overall, I think we're where we sit. We're very happy with their progress, and glad that they're in a position to give us the confidence that they can come up and play NHL minutes.
Is there a scenario where you could see either of them returning to Rockford, or are they pretty much full-time NHLers in your eyes?
No, I think there's always a situation where you can see them going back to Rockford, because you don't want to put them in a situation where you're just all of a sudden, like, maybe they go through a tough stretch. We've seen it with players in the past, right? Lucas Reichel, is a good example of that, where came up, really good, and then struggled a bit. You can go back and gain your confidence, and so sometimes there's that up down, and that's totally fine. A lot of great players have done that and been through that process and been through that kind of back and forth just while they get their feet under them and build that foundation at the NHL level. And so I don't want to say they're full-time NHL players, because we don't want to either put that on them or shoehorn them into a position where they're just getting run out and it's not healthy for their development. So we'll just let them play, and if they do what they need to do to remain at the NHL level, then they'll stay. But Rockford's certainly still on the table for all of our young players should they need it.
What do you say to the fan base, the element of the fan base that's kind of growing antsy as you guys appear to be moving towards another bottom three finish for third straight year? What do you say to them about where the team is going?
Well, I think this is the process that we're running, right? And we're when we set out a little while ago to build this thing back up, is that we needed to build through the draft. We needed to find our new core, and that takes time. That the players have to grow, they have to mature, they've got to develop, and we're in that process, and we're seeing those steps taking place. It may not, especially this year, have resulted in more wins at the NHL level, but we're seeing that happen underneath the surface here. We're seeing, I think Connor's taken a really nice step the last little while. You're seeing Frank come up and take some steps. You're seeing all these young defensemen starting to
to play at the NHL level and get experience and get reps, and that's great for development. We're seeing our players in amateur hockey really take step. This takes time. We knew it would take time, and there's nothing that's gone on, in our prospect group, in the development of our young players, that's causing me concern. Of course, you go to the NHL rink and you go to the United Center, you watch on TV, and you want the team to win. I feel that way too. Players, coaches, everyone feels that way. Having said that, we are in the process of a rebuild here, and it's going to be on the backs of our young players and prospects, and we really are excited about what's going on within that group and how they're developing. And so, that's for me. When you're looking at the progress of the big picture, that's where it sits, and the progress has been extremely positive.
If I could ask one thing, this makes me a little clumsy, but I think I can convey myself so you'll understand what I'm talking about. You've got a lot of draft picks. You've made a lot of draft picks in the last couple of years. Is there anything about, when is there too much at any point, where it's counterproductive to have that many picks and that many prospects in the system in terms of player development, or am I just crazy?
I think in terms of player development, that's when you say, if you're looking at the Rockford team and there's just not enough spots for players, I believe we've staged and that we don't have that problem certainly now, and we should not moving forward. But of course, there is a scenario where you just have this wave of players that comes into pro hockey that you just don't have the room to accommodate. No, I don't think we're going to be in that position. If you're going to go into every draft and consecutively draft 12, 15 players every draft, that's a lot, and you have to have the contracts to sign those players. You have to have the roster spots to develop those players. So I guess potentially, but those are things we've looked at. Those are things we've considered, not only as they come into pro hockey, but also timeline-wise in terms of some guys are going to college, some guys, players are going to junior, 2 years versus up to 4 years. You can stage them out at different levels of hockey. And so certainly you could, but I believe we've planned that accordingly from a process standpoint to account for where those players should be developing.
Tuesday and Carolina both helped the group, and it obviously took some more years and money than it usually does when you've been committing to free agents. Do you foresee? Is that a path that maybe go out? And I know you've been careful with term and how much you guys spend in the cap, but could going and getting an upper echelon player, is that something you're open to this offseason?
We'll see. It's January. I have no clue who's going to be available in 6-7 months, and so we'll continue to consider once we know who's actually available and what makes sense. And a lot can change in the next 6 months basically before we even get there. And so I will. You're never ruling anything out, right? You're always considering what makes sense both short, medium, and long term, and whether that's when you get to the summer and signings, whether that's trade opportunities that come available or considerations that you're making for your roster. You're never ruling. You're never not considering things, and so we always do. But something like that, it's obviously a question I get asked a lot. But
Do you think you need a player like that?
I don't know. I think every team needs players like that, right? But when you get that player and who those players are, and it's really tough to say what the right fit is. And the other thing too is we're one of 32, and everyone wants star players. We're not a one-team league. It's not the Chicago Blackhawks get to pick their players and go get them and off at the races. It's it's a competitive league. Everyone wants to win, and we're no different than anyone else answering these type of questions and having these types of conversations. And so the things you always consider, and having said that, do you want great players in your mix? Of course you do, but we also have to be understanding of where we're at, what we've got, and what will make sense in the long run. And once we know what we're actually evaluating and considering, then we'll make those determinations at the time.
So if you determine it's time to do something like that this summer, how do you sell this to a top star free agent when he's got, you know, teams that are ready to compete? How do you sell Chicago to a top tier player?
I think, you know, it's an original six, an incredible organization, an incredible city. There's a lot of really exciting high-end talent coming up through the ranks, and so you know, I feel confident that we're on a very strong path moving forward, and that we've got the players that and the volume of players that are going to allow us to not once as they develop, you know, be a very effective group, an exciting group in front of an incredible fan base that supports their hockey team. And so I think we've got a lot of selling points. I don't, you know, I'm not too concerned about that. It's more so, you know, we have to determine what's actually available and if it's the right time and the right, you know, options available to us. And, you know, I think as we sit here in January, it's so premature to be considering that. So
I do think that you do have in your favor is cap space and a lot of assets to trade if you choose to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I understand you don't want to sacrifice a long-term future, like you want to stay on this plan you've been on, but do you foresee yourself getting to the point where you're willing to get a little bit more aggressive, weaponizing those assets that you have?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, again, like if options come available that make sense, then you know, we'll consider it for sure. There's no, you know, because we're in the process of a rebuild doesn't mean that we have to make every single pick that we've got in our bank, right? Like if something comes along or you know, options come available that bear consideration and can that makes sense for our group, then we're all for it. You know, there's no rigidity to or trying to be firm to a certain plan that we have to do it this way all the way until the end of time, and you know, we're just going to keep running it back at the draft or what have you. You know, you have to be fluid. You have to be nimble in these things. We're always evaluating, reevaluating, considering options, and so that's something we'll do. It's never about just you know, we started this and you know, that first draft in Montreal, and we're just going to keep going this way, and we're never going to change course. Like, I think you've got to have stages and you've got to have different maneuvers along the way, and I'm extremely open to considering you know, whatever is out there. But again, I can't say I want to do something if nothing's there. You know, you have to just take what comes your way, and you can't manufacture something out of thin air just because you want to, or you want to do something a little bit differently than you have. It's got to be available to you. It's got to be there for you to act upon. And you know, if something comes along that makes sense, then I'm certainly going to act. But you know, it's just I can't manufacture that myself.
If Carolina doesn't re-sign Rantanen, do you get an exclusive negotiating window after Carolina to talk to Rantanen? No.
No.
There's a report out there.
No. That would have been like if you know, any guy we trade, we got an exclusive. You know, no. That's Carolina.
What's your assessment of Bedard's progress, considering things like defense and face-offs? And also, are you concerned about his circumstances? He's not always happy with his game. He's been down at points about losing. You know, just kind of taking his whole situation into consideration.
No, I think Connor's taken some really nice steps this year. Honestly, I think it's, you know, the look. I get the attention he gets. He's a high-profile player coming into the league and into the league. I think people pick every word apart way too much. He's a competitive player that doesn't like to lose, and none of the guys in. If you're in this league, you're in this league because you don't like to lose and you like pushing forward. You have that drive to get better. They all have it. You know, his words get taken much further than everyone else, and everything's read into a little bit more. I think you're starting to see that offensive creativity just, I think, blossom over the last little while here, and he's got some confidence and he's got some swagger back, and it's really exciting to see. I think he's playing really, really well. He's skating really well. I think they've, last night, aside, I think he's him and his line mates have really been clicking, and it's been really fun to watch. I'm not concerned about Connor. He puts in the work. He drives himself to be better every day, and with that will come frustration when you get a little, maybe not a great game or a loss that comes with that never being satisfied attitude. That's why he's being considered, and the attention he's getting. That comes with the territory and with that kind of attitude and always trying to be the best. And so I'm not concerned about him. I do, you do wish he didn't, he wasn't so hard on himself, because it is a long season, and these are, it's if you pick apart your game every single day and every single game, then it can be a really long grind, but that's why he is who he is, and that's why he's got the talent, and maximizing his talent the way he is because he's got that attitude. So you don't want to take that away. Sometimes you wish he'd give himself a break a little bit too, and also maybe by extension everyone else will give him a little bit of a break too. But he's 19. He's doing some incredible things out there, and so I'm really excited by what I've seen.
What are your plans, just more short-term moving forward towards the trade deadline?
We'll just be listening to see what happens. Obviously, when you're in a position that we're in, you're traditionally, more of a seller, but, we'll just kind of see what comes our way, and nothing that we're going to certainly force or we've got a lot of assets. We're not necessarily in that asset build stage like we were a little while ago, and so we've got the luxury of being patient and just seeing what comes our way, and hoping that the group continues to take some steps in the right direction as we have the last week or so, and so we'll just kind of see what comes our way. But I don't have a great feel for it right now, outside of obviously the move we just made. That's really the only active thing we've got going. But it's still early, and he's still got a month and a bit to go before the deadline, and sure, things will pick up a lot more in the lead up to the international break, and then in the lead up to deadline after that.
What do you want to see in the second half?
I'd like to see us as kind of like we have the last not last night, but in the games recently, where we've gotten a lead, we've pushed some good teams, and then we show the mentality to try and keep pushing that lead, keep pushing forward, keep pushing games, and trying to keep imposing ourselves on that game, right? And so rather than get up and then just kind of try and sit back and hold a lead, I'd like to see the mentality continue to shift, and that takes a while. That takes time to really break that, and so continue to change the mentality around the team of trying to, puck drops and you get a lead, as we have many times this year, but keep trying to enhance that lead, increase that lead, and change that mentality, and play on the front foot, and play more up the ice, and that's what I'd like to see. And then also we'll, I think, naturally just where we're at, where we'd like to introduce some of these young players, as we have. We've got a lot of young players up on the squad now, especially on the back end, and so continue to see them take steps and let them work through their transition in the NHL and pro hockey. And so it's not always going to be great with young players. You get those ebbs and flows, and the highs are highs, and maybe the lows sometimes are a little lower, but they have to go through that, and we have to live with that, and understand that that's part of the process, and so allow them to run that process on their end to get used to the NHL level, to the point where they're confident. They believe that they're impact NHL players, and then I think in the end that mentality will push the group forward.
With Laurent, are you expecting him to play at some point this season? And if he does return, have you thought about how to handle a 3 goaltending structure?
I think we've got a really great goalie coach in Jimmy Wade here, and so and we're hopeful that he will. But if he does come back this year, then we're very confident that he'll be able to manage that dynamic, which is not traditional, obviously, but it's a situation we would be in if he would return, and so I think we'll be fine working through that if we end up with 3 goaltenders on the NHL roster.
Looking at the pipeline below the AHL,
Yep.
juniors, and college, obviously you've got a lot of good things. Nick Lardis leads the OHL in scoring, and you've got 5 Hobie Baker nominees. Are there any individual performances thus far that either stand out to you or maybe surprised you?
I don't know about surprise, but it's really nice. I'm always hesitant to name guys because then you're leaving people out. But you mentioned Nick is almost a goal a game in the OHL. That's tough in any league. Sacha Boisvert, going into as a freshman into a great league and a great program at North Dakota. You never know. Again, like the transition from whether college or junior to pro, that junior to college is sometimes tough. The step up in quality and the age of some of the players that you're playing against, and for Sasha to be up near the top of his team in scoring at a great program like North Dakota is really, really exciting. Great to see Oliver Moore win another gold medal at the World Juniors. Sam Renzel having a dynamite year at Minnesota, and up near around a point a game as a defenseman, and just seeing the step in his game has been really exciting. And then a guy like Ryan Green leading, as a leadership in a leadership role as captain at BU. It's really nice to see that success, both from a leadership standpoint, but also a production standpoint occurring with many of our prospects across the board. Roman Kanserov in the KHL having a really great year in a league that's traditionally really difficult for young players to produce in, and so it's there's a lot of exciting things going on in our prospect pool that I think deserve attention. That's where we're building this thing, right? It's through our young players, and they're showing up and they're performing and they're doing everything that we want and need them to do to give us confidence that we're on the right track. And so their play and their development is showing us that we are on the right track, that we are trending the right way. Now they have to keep doing that. They have to keep repeating that and keep stacking those development wins continually moving forward. But they're doing everything that we want them to do and more. And so it's really exciting.
Just one more, if I may. I know before the season, based on your messaging, you seem like you expected to be out of this rebuild stage and take however you define that, other level. So how would you assess where you are in terms of developing this team, and is it what you expected at this point?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think what I mentioned was that we were out of the rebuild stage. We're very, in terms of a rebuild and building up through our young players, a lot of the players are still in amateur hockey. And so we're not out of that. We can't lose sight of that. Did I expect us to be better than second last? I did. But that doesn't at all mean that I'm concerned about the bigger picture here, about the bigger process at play here in terms of where we're headed and how good this group and this young group coming up can be. That hasn't changed at all. I'm probably more optimistic having seen the years that our young players are having throughout the organization. I'm probably more optimistic now than I was in the summer in that respect. Having said that, for this group at the NHL level, I did expect a little more, and we made a coaching change because of that. That's a pretty big indicator that I just didn't feel like the group was where they needed to be, and so that in itself is disappointing. But from a macro level and a much higher level view, I'm really excited and really happy with where things are headed. But like you said, the NHL team, I wish we did have a little more success here in the first half than we have. But it doesn't diminish the progress that I think we are making big picture.